Now, the Special Tribunal is set to decide on its own powers over the case regarding the contractors hired to erect the controversial Beitbridge border fence last year. Now, although work was done, an SIU investigation found that the contract was irregular and that there may have been fraud between the Public Works Department and the companies involved. Now, as part of its recommendations, the companies were asked to pay back the money, of course, that they received for that contract. They have argued that the tribunal has no jurisdiction over this matter. Let's unpack the story for you now. Our reporter, Hitekani Magwedze, is in studio with us. It's such an interesting case, Hitekani. It's great to have you in studio this morning.
Thank you, Michelle.
Because, you know, at first, these two companies, Caledon River Properties and Prof Team, I believe it was, they first agreed to pay back a portion of that money, and then they backtracked.
Correct. And maybe let's take it back way back. And I know in COVID-19 years, it seems like very long ago. But back in 2020, especially just after the government decided to put the nation under a state of disaster, they decided that it would be best to have the government departments operate under what they call emergency procurement laws, which really allow departments to bypass the normal procurement processes. So under normal circumstances, you'd have companies bidding for the same tender. Under this circumstances, because there's no luxury of time, you have government departments deciding which company to give a tender to. You had the Department of Water Affairs, I remember, deciding on who should give them the water tanks. They procured so many water tanks, but they did it under the procurement, the emergency procurement clause. So that's what the Public Works Department did as part of ensuring that the South Africa is able to manage its borders. You remember in the year 2000, that Y2K flood, as they call it, damaged a part of the Beitbridge border fence. Now, with the efforts to try and manage and curb the spread of COVID-19 between our neighboring countries and ourselves, there was a need for us to reinforce the fence and repair it. And that's what the Public Works Department endeavored to do. And that's why the Caledon River Properties and Prof Team were given the tender to start building. And they started building. Before they finished building, I remember I went there with our Newsroom Africa team to try and assess how far this was going. When we went there, we found that it was a really questionable fence. And the tender had gone out for about 37 million rands. And it really didn't seem like it was a fence worth that much. I remember doing a live crossing there to say that there are so many holes on this fence, and it's really short. I mean, me standing upright, I was a little taller than the fence, which brought a lot of things to question. Which
you were taller than the fence?
Absolutely.
How bizarre.
It was meant to be about 2.2 meters, but it was just under 1.8 meters.
So 40, around about 40 million rand worth of a tender to construct this very, very low fence. Caledon Properties and Prof Team then last year, when the matter first appeared before the Special Tribunal, agreed for some of that money to be paid back. Under what sort of reasons would they have agreed if they had built a fence that in their minds was sound and fulfilled the demands of the tender? Why would they in the first place have agreed to pay back some of the money?
That's one of the bizarre parts of this case. I mean, when the SIU had the investigation done, they found quite a number of things that were wrong, and the list maybe intimidated them. We really don't know. I mean, one of the things that the SIU found was that the bill of quantities, which is what is usually used in the construction industry as under this circumstance, the Department of Public Works would then have Prof Team, which is the engineering consultancy company, and the role that they would play would be to go to the Beitbridge border, see the damages and what is needed compile a list of what material should be used, what dimensions are there, how many kilometers need to be filled, and then submit that bill of quantities to the Department of Public Works. They would then take that document and give it to the company awarded the tender to construct.
Right.
That company would then go and shop and put a bill together of how much the material would cost and the labor to it. It seems in this case, the Caledon River Properties did their own bill of quantities way before Prof Team, as an engineering consultancy company, was employed or hired. They did their own bill of quantities, submitted it to the Department of Public Works. It was then sent back to them, and they responded on their own bill of quantities, which brought to question why Prof Team was hired, and if really there was
what they were paid for.
Exactly.
Right.
The amount, the 40 million rand, was then also brought to question. Also, it was found that there was an inflation of 17 million rands on the actual work done, and considering the material that was used.
That issue that you've just brought up in terms of a company like Prof Team being responsible for the bill of quantities, that surely is part of the tender process. That is, in a way, one of the checks and balances. So the main company that receives the tender can't inflate the prices because they've already received from a specialist company a bill of quantities that is exacting in terms of what the project needs. But Caledon River Properties would have then sort of bypassed that check and that balance.
Exactly. And those are some of the irregularities and the possible fraud that would have taken place, and the department having allowed this type of situation to happen. Also, about 14 employees of the Department of Public Works were recommended that they undergo a disciplinary hearing. I know that the DG was then suspended. I believe he's currently suspended as well. As part of all of that, there was a mission to recoup the already 20 odd million rands.
I think it's 21.8.
Exactly. That was already paid. And this is what brought us closer to where we are today, because the companies then decided, well, we don't agree to any wrongdoing, but we agree to paying whatever amount it is that the SIU says we should pay back.
But then it says, actually, the SIU does not have jurisdiction over this case, and that is what today is about.
It's another bizarre step to this, because it's really tantamount to me or somebody coming to steal money from you today, and then you approaching them and saying, well, you stole money from me, I'd like it back. And they in response say, well, I don't agree that I stole the money, but I agree I'll give you back the money next week. Next week you go to them and they say, well, I really don't know you.
Yeah.
So what the two companies are arguing is that the Special Tribunal is not a court. One of the findings by the SIU was that there was a contravention by the Department of Public Works of the Public Finance, it's Public Procurement Act,
right,
which is under the Constitution of South Africa. So it makes it a constitutional matter then, that part of the investigation. And what they're saying is that because the Special Tribunal was brought together by a presidential proclamation, it's not a court. It was not instituted by an act of parliament, such as those courts that are instituted by the act of parliament, or your high court, your constitutional court, and those courts with that type of status.
Right.
And they're saying that the Special Tribunal should not be allowed to hear matters that are involving the Constitution or the contravention of anything under the Constitution. It's a very big test, I believe, for the Special Tribunal. Of course, the SIU is arguing that it only wants this contract to be set aside on the merits of its irregularities,
Right.
and not questioning or not going into matters of constitutionality. In fact, they're saying this is an effort to buy time, to take this matter to court. We see this kind of tactic all the time, to buy as much time to go to the appeals court. Although I must also add that if the court today finds that it has the jurisdiction, the companies have recourse. They can go to the provincial division of a Supreme Court of Appeal.
Very, very interesting indeed. And, if you're wondering why this is such an important story to watch, it's, when we look at the context of corruption and the amount of money we lose on a daily basis on irregular contracts, this is why these kinds of stories are so incredibly important to watch. The numbers are eye-watering, as they usually are. 40 million rand spent on the Beitbridge border fence in Limpopo, and Hitekani Magwedze will keep us up to date on how that case goes. The Special Tribunal set to discover the extent of its powers today.